everyone for this last Fireside Chat of the year from Startup Grind. So some of you are new here to our Startup Grind event. So Startup Grind is the largest and independent community of startups around the world. It was founded in the Valley 10 years ago, and now it has more than 1 billion entrepreneurs and local chapters, more than 600 global chapters. And the goal is to make the connections between entrepreneurs, investors, people who can share their experience and help each other into creating successful startups. We have 3 core values, which are to educate, inspire, and connect. And the previous years in Zurich, so the chapter Startup Grind Zurich has been existing already since 2013, launched by David and joined recently this year by Lorenzo and me as co-directors. And we're just very happy to keep providing and organizing monthly events such as the Fireside Chats, and also a big thank you for the whole community who has followed us the whole year as we were making the transition online. So tonight, for the last Fireside Chat of the year, we have Elena Gross, who is CEO and founder of KetoSwiss. Elena, thank you so much for joining tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope the microphone is working all right.
It's perfect. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, very nice to meet you all, or at least a few of you in the networking session. And I'm looking forward to your questions later on.
Yes, so at any time, please feel free to use the chat function to write your questions for Elena, and we'll circle that back in the conversation. So Elena, to start with about you and your where you come from. So where are you coming from? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So yeah, I was born and raised in a little village close to Frankfurt, and then I did my my university training in York and Oxford in England, and I did my PhD in Basel in Switzerland, and that was in neuroscience, psychology, and in clinical research. Mm-hmm. The 3 different degrees.
And what brought you as a kid to research?
Yeah, so I originally wanted to be an artist, actually.
Okay.
And a book writer, artist and book writer as a child. And then, during my A levels, I realized that I'm kind of interested into both sides, arts and the sciences. So then I decided to do psychology as a first degree, which is a little bit something in between the arts and the sciences, I thought. And I fell in love with the brain, which is basically the organ that makes us who we are, right? It makes us unique in most cases. I guess you could argue genetics, but brains for sure as well. And towards the end of my psychology degree, the migraines that I've had since I was about 13 had turned chronic. And by that time, it was clear that I could never hold down a normal job anyway. And so I applied, and in England, that's possible. I applied for neuroscience, and I was lucky enough to get a stipend to change into neuroscience in my master's, and there I could do 2 master's theses on migraine research already. One was neuroimaging and one was stem cell related. And I was basically given the chance to study my own disease. And that's very lucky. You can basically take your pain and turn it into passion and try to find out for yourself and others what could migraines be, why are they happening? And I was hoping within my lifespan maybe to find something that is a better therapy. Yeah, so in my master's, I had the opportunity to start studying migraines. And towards the end of my degree, I stumbled across something way earlier than I had expected that basically gave me my brain back after a lot of trial and error, let's say. And I then applied for a PhD in exactly that topic. And Basel was the only place where they said they'll take the risk and have me try that as an alternative or a side project in my PhD. Later, it became my major PhD project. And because I wanted this to reach the patient, I started writing a patent just prior to Basel and was hoping to license this out to pharma companies or of the sort later on. And when nobody wanted to take the chance, I founded KetoSwiss to bring this potential solution to patients.
Right. So already during your PhD, you then registered these 2 patents. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, I started writing it, the first one before my PhD, the second one during,
Okay.
and the third one now
Wonderful.
after the PhD. It started with the first one that really was I don't know, like when you write a science paper for the first time. I had no idea what was going on. The first draft was terrible. Everybody said this would never be approved. Then I got some constructive feedback and I wrote a second draft, and that was much better then. And that is about to be approved. And that's basically for using anything that raises ketone bodies, and we will probably come to what ketone bodies are, for migraine prevention or treatment. So using an alternative energy substrate for the brain is basically
and if
the whole idea.
I think now it would be actually a good moment to tell us more about the ketones, just as a background information for people who never heard of it. It's very big in the States, but I don't know in Switzerland how much knowledge we have on that.
Yeah. So well, maybe it's worth mentioning that in how far migraine is actually a disease is debatable. And our theory, my theory, and of some other people, is that migraine is actually an energy deficit syndrome of the brain. So the brain is an energy deficit. So now you might wonder, how is that possible in a time where food has never been as abundant as it is today? And this is something that I needed to grasp and I didn't understand. Having calories, some form of fuel, doesn't mean that it actually gets to where it needs to go. And an analogy might be a car where you have diesel cars and you have petrol cars. If you give diesel to a petrol car, the engine will break. And it's similar with the brain or the cells. If you go back 10,000 years ago, the way that humans were eating was drastically different to the way it is today. We were going through periods of fasting, long times of fasting. There was no carbohydrates available. In winter, we would just eat maybe, some leaves, some meat in winter times. And during the times when carbohydrates were unavailable, our livers would make an alternative fuel for the brain, and those are called ketone bodies. So basically, these ketone bodies, which are the second major source of energy in the brain, are no longer around today due to the way we're eating. And they're no longer around for a long time, but they're only no longer around for 10,000 years, which from an evolutionary perspective is a blink of an eye. Now, what we're arguing is that the way that our environment has changed in those 10,000 years of time was not enough time, and it was too drastic for all of us humans to adapt to the way we're eating today. And this leaves our most energy-hungry organ, which is the brain, starving in a lot of people. And so what KetoSwiss is trying to do, we're not trying to promote that everybody should be fasting or eating a ketogenic, a fasting mimicking diet, but we're trying to reintroduce this oldest energy source of human brains back into the modern world, but with a more modern approach. We synthesize that human identical molecule in the lab and then hopefully add it on top of a healthy diet in patients so that their brains can be fueled again. And there's one more information that you need. You might be wondering, well, why isn't the brain eating carbohydrates or protein or longer chain fatty acids that are in our fat stores? And the answer to that is that the brain is protected by a blood-brain barrier, which is very good for keeping out toxins and all sorts of things that we don't want. But it also means that only 3 very small molecules can actually make it into the brain to fuel it. And the other thing is that the brain is so packed with all sorts of things that it cannot actually store energy. So it means it's dependent on the circulation of the rest of the body to give it energy. And this is where the liver comes into the picture. And basically only glucose and ketone bodies can get into the brain. Now, a modern human is reliant on glucose only. A system that is only relying on a single source of whatever it is probably going to run into difficulties. And glucose cannot be stored very well. Even in the healthiest human, 24 hours of glucose storage, and then the glucose storages are empty. But even the leanest of humans can store 6 weeks of fats that can be turned into ketone bodies to fuel the brain. So glucose isn't the best or the most sustainable or even the most effective fuel source for the brain. Ketones are also producing less oxidative stress. They are reducing inflammation. They help the mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell, function better. They reduce hyperexcitability in the brain, which is important for migraine and epilepsy. And so basically, today, let's say 10,000 years ago, humans were still hybrid cars. We were using electricity, which could be seen as the glucose for in the city. And then when we needed to go longer, we could use petrol or diesel. These days, every one of us is an electric car. We need to find a plug every 2 to 3 hours, and we cannot make ketones anymore because we've forgotten. So a modern human is still born in ketosis. A modern human, a baby human still makes ketones. It's super important for brain development to have ketones around. Otherwise, you're never reaching your potential, or you might even die. And then once we're put on a normal diet, basically our livers forget to make ketones. And and we're here to
Thank you so much.
Change that situation.
And so you came to, did you have a aha moment where you understood what was really happening and how it had a direct influence to your own experience, to your migraines as you were researching?
Yes, there was a very great moment. I had been working with chronic migraine patients back in Oxford using neuroimaging studies, and I already started to develop the theory that it's an energy deficit of some sort. And even in Oxford, they didn't teach us about ketone bodies at all. We were trained that the brain is reliant on glucose only. So one day, the scanner broke down, and one of the chronic patients had to come back 2 weeks later, and I almost didn't recognize her. She was walking upright, she was smiling, she had lost weight, she looked healthy. I didn't recognize her as the same person that was almost crawling into the lab with pain the last time we scanned her. And I asked what she was doing. And she said she had been fasting for 2 weeks. And she had even a glass of red wine every night, and it didn't trigger a migraine attack. And I thought, well, her brain must have been so starving, no energy around at all. But that was a mistake. So then later, towards the end of my degree, I was procrastinating from my master's thesis and just flicking through a Nature magazine, and it had an epilepsy special in there. And that described the oldest treatment for epilepsy. And that is a ketogenic diet. And a ketogenic diet basically is a diet that is made 80% from fat, 15% from protein, and only 5% of carbs. So basically, your body doesn't know, is it metabolizing fat from in or outside? And metabolizing fat from outside has very similar effects. It raises ketone bodies when carbohydrates are absent, right? And basically 150 years ago, people realized, or doctors realized, if they fast their patients, the epilepsy attacks cease completely, or at least reduced a lot. And finally, all the puzzle pieces came together, and it finally makes sense. My patients, including me, they had been eating and starving at the same time. And this is something that many medical doctors and many people don't know. You can eat and starve at the same time if you give the body the wrong fuel. And this is just so important. And then everything made sense. So this patient fasting had fed her brain for the first time, because finally her liver had started to make ketone bodies again. And that means her brain had finally gotten the fuel that it was designed to have around. And Lorenzo just asked this. So yes, fasting is exactly doing what exogenous, well, it's doing even more than exogenous ketones are doing, because fasting forces your liver to finally make ketones. Now, in a migraine patient, if you start fasting, and this is how I started, it gave me the worst migraines for weeks, because my body had not yet rediscovered how to make ketones. It's like you have this manual that is somewhere deep down in your cellar, covered by dust and dirt and stuck together, and it's not been used since your birth. And now you're basically stopping giving your body glucose that it's been depending on all its life. And then the body has to try and find that manual for ketones, and then learn how to transport it, build all the transport molecules and all that. So the first transition back into ketosis can be cruel if you're not a healthy person. And so this is also where exogenous ketones can help, because you don't have to dig up that manual at first. Your body and your brain has something to burn.
By exogenous, you mean then as a food supplement? Yeah.
Yes, made in the lab. So endogenous meaning your body makes them. Exogenous means we make them or somebody else, and then you just drink them. And because they're very similar to butyrate, which is the fatty acid that your gut bacteria makes, that means that the transport system is already there. So the bioavailability is amazing. You get instant ketosis in 15 minutes. It looks like you have been fasting for weeks. And that's another advantage. And I see Adrian has a question, if I can maybe... are ketones also acting on potential feeling of hunger? Yes, certainly, but only in one condition. So basically, your feeling of hunger is your brain telling you some cells are starving. We need more energy, right? Now, this is the biggest problem in obesity. It's not a problem of willpower. Obesity has insulin resistance. Insulin is the taxi driver that takes glucose into your cells. Now, an obese person, again, cells are starving. Now, if you are a bad glucose burner, right, then you're constantly hungry because you're only giving your body the kind of fuel that it can't eat. Now, if you give ketones to that person that is insulin resistant, then they finally feel full and they eat less. So this is why ketosis is also used for weight loss so successfully, because you're giving a fuel source that is completely independent of insulin, and most cells can use it very well. So that's why it's leptin deficiency. Well, leptin is the hunger hormone, right? So the most important thing is insulin here. If you're leptin deficient, means your body shuts down to the hunger signal in a way, right? Exogenous ketone supplement is helping some people there, just because it's feeding the cells, and then the brain can say, okay, we're no longer starving, we're good, you don't need to eat.
And just to come back now about your experience, how did you transition really from academia to starting your own business? When did you start to realize that you were really set to start and found a company?
Well, I guess it was kind of a gradual process. So I was given the opportunity to take place in this Novartis biocamp. I don't think they do them anymore, where they invited, I think, 75 people from all over the world, researchers that had potential or whatnot, and they divided them into 8 or 9 groups. And we were given a real life case study, a startup biotech case study. And before that, I had heard nothing on business, and it was this great unknown that I was so scared of. And I thought I could do the science, and then hopefully maybe somebody will turn this into a business. And that's all I can do as a scientist, is something I can probably never learn. Nobody in my family does business. I don't know anybody who does business really before now, right? But then we won the case study, and we had some business people on the team. And I realized that potentially that business stuff could be learned. And so when after this Novartis case study and the success there, when I realized that nobody wants to license the patent, at least for now, because it was too risky, I founded KetoSwiss and decided I'll try myself, right? And I think after or within your PhD, when you've never had any money, it's not like you're taking this super big risk of quitting a well-paid job and jumping into this startup where you don't have any money and you don't know whether it will still be there tomorrow, right? It's like, well, I don't have any money. I'm not earning anything anyway. I might as well try now. And if it fails, then I'll move on and do something else. And I also have to say, then I'll just, I don't know, try to do something else. And I think I would have regretted not trying. And also have to say, after 2 years in the PhD, I was quite disillusioned with academia and what I thought academic life and work would be like. In my lab, actually, nobody really cared about the science. They cared about publishing. They cared about whether they would be and when they would be professors, and how they could best get their publication index up there. But the real answers and the good research, I felt, was not available, and not so many people in the hospital. I think I was probably just unlucky, but the whole publish or perish pressure, and that I felt that wasn't my world. And also you would be would have been dependent on one professor doing good decisions for another 10 years or more before being able to make my own small decisions on 150 1,000 grant. With KetoSwiss in my back, even before being a professor, I can now apply for 4 million grants for research, right? Just because I have a company. It's insane, but that's you have much more. I still want to do research. I still love research, but now I feel like I have more means to do the research that I think is actually beneficial. And I also don't have to publish it very well or compete with other people wanting to publish and be an individual fighter rather than a team player. Now I can have a team, and I can, without the risk of somebody else publishing this first.
And so today your activity is mostly on the company side, and so you do little research, or is it still a big part of what you enjoy doing and what you put your interest and time into?
I wish I had time. I mean, most work is managing people and admin stuff. It's very annoying. Patent, admin, patents I get to read. That's kind of like science in there. I guess I can't even keep up with the papers. I have to tell somebody else to tell me what the actual mechanisms are. I still have to publish a paper or two from my PhD. That's taking a long time. So I'm doing a little bit on that on the side, but it's mostly CEO life these days, fundraising, Zoom calls, endless Zoom calls all day, also with the team. So sadly, maybe at some point after an exit, I can turn back to the side. But the good thing is that I can also, I guess you can delegate science now, right? So we pay for science. So we have two research collaborations that do pharmacokinetic studies for us, for example. And you can decide, at least you can contribute to how a study should be set up and what should be.
So you were mentioning about your team. Tell us a bit more about that. So how did you come to build it? What are you looking at when you have been building your team? Did you get any support, or how was your experience in there?
I think team building was pretty difficult. I also don't know whether I always have the best people for the job, because the best person for the job is typically very expensive, and at an early stage startup I think you have to compromise between somebody who is in the place you want them to be, who's currently available, who's not eating away all your budget, and maybe working a bit for equity. I know that people have different opinions there, but it was basically everybody I have is through network. So we were first person from Oxford, our CMO, and then startup events. You meet somebody who knows somebody, you tell somebody you need a COO, they know somebody, and then all that. Or Matthias Wehren, who used to be our CFO, is now a board member, was from a first investor who sent him our way. And so I think, I guess network is the most important in a startup world. And people say this all the time. I never believed it, but I really think it's
talking about
true.
network. If you're looking now for your support in your team, you can just place it, and maybe somebody will have somebody that they know who's interested. So there you go.
Yeah, so if anybody knows maybe a student or somebody who's just graduated who's interested in startups or migraine or ketones, metabolism, who wants to help us with some admin stuff, but also social media posting, a bit of marketing, basically all-round help in different areas on a part-time basis at first, would be wonderful to hear from
network power. Here we go.
Yeah, just as a side. Yeah, exactly. Maybe somebody knows somebody. Shall we do another question?
Yeah, we'll get the questions for later. I wanted to ask you about how did you get to your rounds of funding? Because you have had quite an unusual experience and luck, I suppose, for pitching for investors.
Yeah, I think so. So again, it was network. I was doing a biotech course, one of the first courses still in my PhD, how to basically set up a startup and fundraise and whatnot, do a pitch deck and those things. And one guy in my team sent me to Henri Meyer, who used to be a big investor in Switzerland. He's now retired. And via him, he was very interested in migraines personally, but since he was already getting fairly old, he was sending me one of his best friends, Matthias Wehren, and then he was just meant to meet me for a coffee. And I think he liked the idea. We met for another coffee and another one, and basically he's never left me until today. And he's been one of my dearest advisors. At some point, he said he wants to invest. And then we still needed to top up that ticket size. And I was with some of my girlfriends from school. I was having a conversation over dinner, and one of them had a new boyfriend, an Irish boyfriend, and he was just there because he was visiting. So he was listening to the conversation of me talking about KetoSwiss. We had been joking when I was little that at some point I will create a migraine drug and we'll name it something. I even forgot the name. But so this was a joke that has been turning around, and suddenly I'm sitting down and I'm telling them I founded this company and we're dedicating this to finding a migraine drug. So they were super happy. And then the new boyfriend said that he has been investing in real estate and he's seen pitch decks before. He could help me set up a pitch deck. I sent him the pitch deck. He came over, long story short, after 3 hours, I wanted to kick him out because I thought this was enough advice on pitch decks. And then he said he would invest as well. And that was a seed round closed. so that was so I'd never reached out to investors officially for the seed round at least. And the rest of the funding was a little bit like this: people reaching out or advisors wanting to jump in. Now we due to COVID, we opened a convertible loan, which was a pretty good decision, I think. And over the last years, more and more people that were interested in either migraine space or ketones or had been advising us and wanted to come in, were coming in through the convertible loan. And I have to say that we did have a very good offer for a Series A prior to COVID. And then with COVID, that had been withdrawn. But now we can stay alive quite well with angel investors.
Would you have any advice for women who are wanting to start or looking at ways to start their own company?
I really think that being a woman these days probably is an advantage, or can be used to an advantage. I mean, a lot of investors have read the news that a female-led startup is likely much more successful than a male-led startup. Although we're only making up 2% of the CEOs out there, I think usually, or so far on average, we tend to outperform the male peers. I'm not sure if this is a selection bias, but I think you can be confident as a female. I know maybe some risk aversion and paying lower salaries, what females usually do, can be advantageous at the beginning, at least. I mean, we haven't run out of money in times where I saw my friend's startup already perish because they ran out of money due to the COVID situation. So I really think that there's differences in male and female leadership that can be, each of them can be advantageous. So probably a balanced team might be nice. But I also know that some investors are specifically looking for female-led startups now to also fill the gap in a way. So I think you can use that to your advantage, be one of the beginners and I don't know, the inspirational women leading the way to more gender equality in CEO roles. I think, you just need to be confident about what you have to offer. It can be intimidating. I remember when I was negotiating with Lonza or whatever, and there's 6 older gentlemen in suits around the table, and then there's me, and I'm presenting in front of them. That can be intimidating, but I still think that if you're there for a reason, and that you're a woman can be an advantage. Sometimes they're surprised and quite happy about a young woman saying something that actually makes a lot of sense and has something to offer, right? So yeah.
And do you also see any differences between the market here for biotech in Switzerland or how it would be in the States or internationally?
I don't have too much experience with biotech or startups in the States. I know ticket sizes are probably higher in the States. Funding rounds might be more competitive. They might be going quicker. I think there might be more competition. I know Switzerland is fairly conservative, especially in biotech. So we had some trouble with offering something that is natural because they have been known for 50 years. Biotech is always small molecule substance that you can, the actual compound that you can patent. And now having something that's actually natural to the body is not so attractive to them. So I know Switzerland can be a bit more conservative, but also I guess once a Swiss person says something, it might count more than when an American investor says, well, this is a great idea. They might say this to everyone. So these are maybe some thoughts.
And about your product, so is that MigraCat, right?
MigraCat, we call it, that's just a name we use internally. I'm not sure if that's the brand name we will use in the end. That's not entirely me to decide. I'm not the marketing expert, but MigraCat from migraine and keto. Yeah. So for now it's MigraCat. The trial was called MigraCat as well.
And when are you planning then to have a product launch, and on which markets precisely?
Yeah, so we wanted to start launching in the US next year already, actually, with a supplement, just because all the regulation cost to market in the US is so much cheaper than Europe, and also compared to a medical product. Now we have investors that are actually really interested in making this a drug entirely. which would maybe postpone the launch in the US a bit because we wouldn't want to be too distracted at the beginning. This might be a showstopper for them. So now it's really up in the open. If we don't get significant investments for the drug route, then we'll enter the US market next year, mid next year or whenever, with a supplement. And if we get significant investments, then we'll start with clinical trials and delay the market entry a bit more.
And for a launch in Europe, are you?
Europe needs a novel food approval. Anything that hasn't been on a market in Europe prior to 1997 is considered a novel food. Now, just because we make those ketones on our own doesn't mean that a supplementary form is necessarily 100% safe according to the EU. So that means that you have to do tox and animal studies, potentially human studies. So we are looking at 500,000 to 1 million, and then 2 to 3 years until the EU has managed to look at the dossier and tell you yes or no. So this is the hurdle right now. It's a lot of time in between and some investments as well for EU launch, but that's the second step, either funded with the US revenue or basically funded with an investor, hopefully, potentially.
And do you have planned an exit for KetoSwiss at all?
Yes, I mean, of course, you always have to communicate potential exits, whether they will happen exactly like that. I mean, for the clinic, it's very easy. It's probably phase 2. And depending on the partner, you don't have to exit after phase 2. But the thought of running phase 3 trials makes me sleepless already. And so I think I would definitely prefer to sell after phase 2 in a clinic case. In a supplement case, it really can go on to I mean, we have so many product ideas that you could do. So in a supplement case, it could be an IPO, or it could be selling to Nestle was already interested. I don't want to sell to Nestle, but that would be a typical exit partner, or P&G later on at a certain revenue, or we just partner with them. That's another, and then still keep going. Yeah.
Have you?
So exit uncertain.
Have you had experience times where you feel, oh, this is such a big fail? And how did you, what was it, or how did you come out of it?
Well, I guess, the one thing, I have 2 advantages, I think, that not everybody has. One thing, I have already won, right? So I have my control back, I have my health back, I have migraines maybe about 2 days per month compared to 20 days. I was thinking I have a life in pain and I could not live a normal life. I have my life back. So in a way, no matter what happens, I'm already the luckiest, right? And the other thing is, whenever I feel like, oh my God, everything's going to collapse and it's horrible and it's never going to be better, then I also think that, in a way, maybe this is, it's maybe my duty or my duty to at least try my best, or there's something I owe other patients that are in a similar situation that I was. There's no way that I can basically live a life without trying to spread what I've learned, right? In any shape or form. If it's not KetoSwiss, I'll do some more videos and I'm writing a book to spread the word, right? There's several vehicles. And so then I'm like, okay, if KetoSwiss, worst case, KetoSwiss fails, which is bad for all investors, but I will still do something with this. So this is what then gives me hope, and then I can calm down, sleep again. And usually there is always a solution. Some kind of a solution. It might not be a great solution, might hurt a bit, but there's always some way to pivot and go forward. At least so far, there has always been ways to deal with problems.
Wonderful. Do you have a few elements that you would like to be reminded for when you, for instance, when you retire, or in terms of your personal story and your experience with KetoSwiss?
If I retire, I think depends on when this is. It might be young or old. I'll certainly, should I ever be in the position of having enough money not to worry about anything, I'll probably want to be reminded of staying humble, staying curious. I think it's important always having an eagerness to learn. That's what fulfills me the most. I think these aha moments, these things when I understand things, when I learn something new. And also, I think even then, the most important thing is always people, right? It's a team, it's a network, it's friends, it's family, health and people. That's my priorities now, and I hope this will never change if I have money. And so if I retire and become an asshole, then maybe you can ring me and remind me of what the most important things in life are, and that I should get my
I'll send you a link to the interview.
Yeah, send me a link.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
For you, what do you think is the most underappreciated skill set in entrepreneurship?
Underappreciated skill set. I don't know what the appreciated skill sets in entrepreneurship are. Is there something that is common knowledge that I'm not aware of? So then I can tell you the underappreciated ones. I'm not sure. I mean, there's typically, I guess, what people appreciate is
with your attitude.
Maybe it's maybe underappreciated. Maybe it's actually being able to speak well in English. I was quite surprised myself that the better the English, the more people are maybe engaging or listening to what you're saying. So maybe this is something that is underappreciated, that people might just be inclined to watch more English movies or whatever, and then more people are listening. I mean, the best pitches, best content, so amazing. If the English isn't great, we had some guests from Korea pitch, and it was horrible. Nobody was listening because it was hard to follow the pitch. So maybe actually the language skill is an underappreciated skill in entrepreneurship. I think everybody knows networking. I think a tip for networking would be if you actually care about people and you're not trying to meet that, but you're actually wanting just to know what does somebody do, irrespective on which side they are at, if they're the investor or the startup person. If you just want to get to know more people for the sake of knowing that person, it seems like they're more willing to do things for you as well, rather than hunting the most important investor at a networking event.
So the human connection and being very, very genuine.
Exactly. Human connection. And a lot can come from fellow founders as well, who then introduce you to their. So even just your peers can be as important networking partners to the important people.
That's true.
Maybe. Yeah. I would probably have to think about the question. Maybe we can come back to the end now. Think about more underappreciated and think about what might be appreciated.
Absolutely. Is there any kind of qualities that you developed in academia and that you feel are really helping you now as a founder, or vice versa?
Yeah, I believe so. And one thing that I found very shocking now thinking about is that in a lot of business or finance people I have met, I noticed a tendency, and this is of course not true for everybody, but and also the advice to not tell the truth, and or to make the truth sound better than it actually is. And I think in science, I kind of learned the brutal honesty, and of course this can backfire sometimes. But I also think from an investor perspective, or people that you're working with, sometimes they really appreciate if you just tell them what went wrong, because in the end it will come out anyway, in my opinion, right? So I know one investor, he was like starting to laugh and was like, oh my God, I love your German honesty. That was a US investor, right? They were shocked that I would even say these things during a meeting because they're not used to it. Sometimes they're used to this over-exaggerating, we're going to change the world in every aspect, but I'm not sure if that works all the time. So from academia, directness, honesty, if things go wrong, mistakes happen, is fine if you already present the solution with it. Solution-oriented also, and not talking if I don't know anything. That would be the other thing. That's also something. If I don't know, I'll just say I don't know, and then I'll talk for 10 minutes, hoping that people will forget the question. Will have forgotten the question by the end or something like that.
Yeah. What is the best piece of advice that you remember getting?
I think very much at the beginning, somebody told me network is everything. And I think that is probably still the best advice, because I started to go to these events. And even when money was very scarce at the beginning, my own pocket money or whatever, I started paying for startup days. And it was always the most rewarding experience. Go to conferences. I mean, this is now a terrible time for this, but going to conferences, meeting the people, sometimes accidentally, it takes a long time. You don't build a network in a day. So I was very happy that I started this early, even though I didn't quite believe it. And I would encourage people to do the same within their peers, you have a question and then you have so many questions at the beginning, but then you'll know somebody who's been through this and they can send you to the people that will know the answer.
Yeah. How do you manage to keep a balance in your life between being a founder and writing your book, everything else?
I'm not sure I have the balance out yet. I have to say, I mean, I do try. I mean, just because I think I'm telling myself if I'm working too much, then I can't work well. So I do try to go outside as much as I can, at least on the weekend, go to nature, ground myself, have something green around me, some kind of a forest or mountain or river or something on the weekend that keeps me sane. And I'm trying to at least do one work-free day. So one weekend day where I'm catching up on all the things that I didn't manage, and one day that I keep to myself. And then also evenings, typically after dinner, I have at least 3 hours off or something. I watch something, and then if there's something urgent, I'll do another hour before bed. But I always try to also get some free time during the day. I try to eat well. And also, I guess that's something for myself, that I try to cook for lunch if I can, or take something good and sit down and eat something good and not just snack while working. And I have to improve on the holiday as well. But I did go to France this year, and I did not have internet. So 5 days, no internet. It was amazing. It's just a shut off from like completely withdrawal. Usually I take some work with me, but that was amazing too. So I really will can encourage everybody to just take some time to not check emails all the time and then get stressed about not being able to reply now. That was quite good. I'm working on it though. It's a constant work in progress. The balance thing and sleeping. I mean, I have to say I sleep 8 to 9 hours if I can. And that's the one thing that I will never compromise on, because nowadays there's not like an all-nighter before an exam or something. I always try to get 8 hours no matter what. And if I can't, then I'll schedule a nap or something. So enough sleep is super important.
Would you have on top of the sleep other little tips for entrepreneurs or people who are thinking about starting their business and think that they'll need to start to hustle and skip or spend every week an hour?
Yeah, so I think the major important thing, sleep is important, and that includes turning your bedroom into something that favors good sleep. So that means usually you should have your bedroom cool at night, 18 degrees. It should be completely dark if you can. And I think when the sun sets is about the time where your melatonin production should start to increase, which means you should filter out any blue lights. I actually, because I didn't want to spend a lot of time on money on new light bulbs, what I did, I just took some acrylic paint and painted my light bulbs yellow, so that at night they're basically they're giving away a warm light and not a blue light that keeps you awake. So if you have trouble sleeping, then certainly you can also get some blue light blocker glasses like these. They can look very normal. They can have a filter in there, so that if you still have to work on your laptop at night, at least you don't get the blue light that inhibits melatonin production, so you can sleep better. The next pillar certainly is nutrition, right? If your brain is meant to work well, it needs all the micronutrients, all the minerals, all the amino acids. So if you need to deprive yourself of relaxation, then definitely eat well and regularly, I suppose. And also drinking is important. I always thought water is water, but that's completely not true. So if you just drink tap water, you might want to think about switching to a high mineral water, as you have wonderful waters in Switzerland, like a real mineral water that comes with 10, 20, 100 times more minerals than your tap water or your Aldi 10 cents water. And water is not always water. So water comes with a lot of nutrients, and you basically get them for free when you drink good water. That's also great for your brain. So you need minerals for your mitochondria, for your brain function. Something else, I think nature is important, grounds us, maybe have for better air, have some plants around you on your desk. Plants, green, it calms you down, is even analgesic. So, and then also movement. I think at least once a day, if you can squeeze it in, this could be in the evening, 20-30 minute walk is the minimum. Now with home office, you need to sometimes stand up in between, but also make sure that at least you have a brisk walk. If you can't fit any exercise in, just walk somewhere. Have your phone calls. This is also great. I've been doing this in summer. Some of the not so important meetings you can actually have on the phone while walking. And then you have both. And this is what saved me in the Corona home office times, is just having some of the endless team meetings on the phone and just going for a slow walk.
I can so agree on walking phone calls. It was the best thing during the whole lockdown.
Amazing.
I mean, because we could do it here in Switzerland,
It really was.
Absolutely.
That really worked very well. And social connections for me. For some people, it depends on the type of person you are. I'm more of an extrovert. People give me energy, so I try to at least also now this has to be much more selective. Also sometimes just meet some people that give me energy and make me feel better, make me laugh. And then I think you have the strength to work harder. And one last very important tip: if you work on something you actually like, or you work on something where the end is something that will get you further in life, that you're working for yourself and you're working for something that you're passionate about, then working doesn't feel so much like working at all. I mean, then I think it will be easier and less slaving away.
Yeah. How long have you been now, if we can say, almost migraine free?
Well, sadly, I'm not migraine free.
But...
So the last one, also now with COVID, the last one was 3 days ago, or 4 or 5. So I still get them twice a month, but better in migraine 5 years now.
Yeah, and so the changes that you did personally were mostly in the nutrition.
And I was lucky to get hold of some of the very first exogenously produced supplements. So I actually did both. Sometimes a bit of the diet, sometimes supplements when I could afford it. They were very expensive, but I was taking them sometimes all the time, like 6 months constantly, and then sometimes less and a bit more of the diet, or a bit more. Endogenous and exogenous ketones for me were mixed. And the interesting thing is that after 2.5 years, I could stop both diet and exogenous ketones. Okay. And it's kind of like they show in these epilepsy studies, is that if you are in ketosis for a certain amount of time, for the kids in epilepsy, it's 2 to 5 years, whatever therapeutic efficacy they were getting is outlasting the period of ketosis. Oh. Now, in adults, there's not that much evidence. We know it happens as well. And in migraine, there was only 2 case studies, but it really seems to be the case that whatever gene expression changes are happening are outlasting the duration of ketosis. And that means you don't have to do it for life. You might have to, I'm not sure, I'm not saying that now I never have to be in ketosis. I try to top this up once in a while, right? So that my body remembers, have like a refresher keto week, or maybe now in winter, live a bit more like our ancestors would have. So reduce carbs in winter when they wouldn't have been around. I'm taking, now that when I feel a migraine coming, I'm taking exogenous ketones anyway, maybe around my menstrual cycle where oxidative stress goes high, or if I've had too much alcohol, or if I know I have had a stressful week, or now with COVID, this is the times where I want to take exogenous ketones selectively. But it's amazing that potentially these changes are outlasting, and you don't need to be in ketosis all the time, even as a patient.
Wow, wonderful. What would be for your next milestones for KetoSwiss, and the factors that will help you to reach them?
Yeah, so people have been asking what's different from our product to exogenous ketones. There's a few things. We're fermentation based, which means bacteria make it. It's not artificial, so completely natural. We have the D-enantiomer, which means you might remember from your chemistry class, stereo enantiomers basically means that if you have a chemical that has different functional groups, like 2 hands, same ingredients on both hands, but these functional groups can be oriented differently in space. So it means whatever I do, my hands have the same ingredients, but I can never align them in space. Now, molecules with different functional groups, if they're synthesized chemically, they always come in 50-50 of both forms. But one form can be toxic for the body.
So tell us again about just I think we lost you when you were explaining about the toxicity of the molecule.
Lysine. So so we're using only the right version, right spinning version of the molecule, D-beta-hydroxybutyrate. And then also we're working on sustained release. Basically, a ketone body has a very short half-life because it's metabolized very quickly. So after 4 hours, everything is gone. And this version, we have almost infusion-like ketone bodies to fuel the brain basically 24/7 with 2 oral doses. And that's something that nobody else has thus far. So that, and then CGMP, pharma grade, we're working on as well. And we have a better mineral balance. So this is also important. Ketone bodies can be subtypes attached to a mineral, artificial molecules such as butanediol, which is an alcohol. We don't have that either. And we're working on using the free acids, so without minerals attached to them. So there's a few USPs, I guess, that we have compared to other, of course.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. So we'll end up the interview, the part of the fireside chat, with a few rapid fire questions. So I'm going to ask you, and these questions go very quickly. And if you can answer really the first thing that comes to your mind in 1 or 2 words, that would be great. And then we can take some questions. So what item do you have that you would never sell?
Say that again. What item would I have that I would never sell?
Yes.
Photos.
What is your most unusual skill?
Drawing? I don't know. I draw.
Okay. Cool. What is most important for you? Strength, speed, or stamina?
Stamina.
What historical figure do you admire the most?
Probably Einstein, I guess.
Yeah. What is your favorite season?
I'm not sure I have one. I love them all. This is sounds bad, but it's literally 50-50. I love them all for their individual qualities. I can't choose one.
I understand. When was the last time that you tried something new?
Oh, I almost every day. I mean, 3 days ago, I tried the Abbott Freestyle Libre, which is like a blood sensor that you stick into your arm, where you can constantly monitor blood glucose levels. So, and then 2 weeks ago, I tried a new meter that measures your blood oxygen levels. So I tried something new as much as I can, I suppose.
Being your own living experiment.
Exactly, experiment. Yes, yes. Looking at effects that some foods have on certain markers, and
Okay, cool. What is team or single founder?
I'm a single founder.
Yeah. Cats or dogs?
Cats.
Beer or wine?
Wine.
Your favorite app?
WhatsApp, because it connects me to people. I hate it actually, but I like the people that are in there.
Yeah, that's good enough. One thing on your bucket list?
One thing on my bucket list? Traveling to places that I haven't been and living there for a while. For example, Bali has been high up for a while.
I know with remote working, it could be always more feasible, right?
Exactly. Traveling.
If you could have the attribute of any animal, what would you choose?
Well, I know that I'm called a squirrel because I hop around and eat nuts all the time. So but I've also been referred to as sloth because I prior to like 9 or 10 in the morning. I'm not sure these are qualities that I want to be associated with, but I am.
Well, nuts are good for the brain, no?
Yeah, exactly. So
there you go.
I hope that counts.
I'm pretty sure it does.
But maybe it would be what are these animals called that are monogamous? They're very they call and team oriented and friendly and wonderful.
What was the name of the animal?
Well, I forgot the English term for it. I'll look it up and tell you. It's just
Okay, cool. Elena, thank you so much for your time and for being with us and for bringing all your energy here. It's been a pleasure to hear you. And if you are still up for a few questions, then we could welcome the crowd in.
Certainly.
Yeah?
There's been a few already posted that we can
Yes.
discuss.